listening to Parent Projects.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's show of the podcast, where we are going to have Frank Milstead, CEO of Big Leadership, a consultancy in law enforcement, and former DPS, Arizona DPS director, discussing with us crisis communication from a distance, building awareness of managing mom and dad's parent project when you might be out of town, and some privacy issues to know and to be aware of up front. Ultimately, our hope is that this is going to help you before and after a crisis. And the show gets started right now.
You're listening to Parent Projects, a family media and technology group production. Now here's your host, Tony Siebers.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's broadcast of the show. And we're blessed to have Colonel Frank Milstead, former director of Arizona DPS, with us today, a consultant in the law enforcement arm, from issues in leadership in law enforcement down to understanding privacy concerns, but generally also somebody with a parent project and a reachable person, regardless of all of this training and amazing stuff. Hey, Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tony. I appreciate it. Again, being a student of all of these things throughout my 35-year career in law enforcement, and then having parents grow old at the same time, it's an honor to be here and be able to share some information.
Well, I appreciate you helping us make it real. There's so many times, and maybe you've even felt it, where as soon as you jump into it, our members will tell us they felt like they were by themselves. It was the first time anybody had ever done it. They look out into the internet, and it's a big, wide blue ocean of information and can become pretty overwhelming. So I think this is going to be really valuable for us to start honing in on some conversations, maybe in and around crisis, where you got a ton of training. Right? Tell us about the training that you bring to bear in your own parent project, but just into life. What are the types of things that Frank Milstead has been trained on when it comes down to conversations?
Well, I think it all started when I was a neophyte Phoenix police officer back in 1985, and we learned interpersonal skills and communication. We called it verbal judo back then. How to talk back and forth with somebody, how to speak quietly when somebody's very excited, to try to bring the room down, the volume down, the temperature down. And then it was problem solving skills. It was my time at Phoenix PD, the 25 years I spent there. It was a PhD in leadership and problem solving. It was, how do you take community problems, neighborhood problems, domestic problems, and how do you break those down into pieces that people can understand and maybe have just that little bit better of life because they have information they didn't have before.
Completely. And I think the city of Phoenix, what an amazingly diverse group of people that sit within. I've been here for almost 15 years. I have met I can count on my fingers how many people I've met from Phoenix. Almost everybody comes from someplace else.
Well, you can count me. Born and raised.
Okay, that's right. In fact, I think if I remember from when we met Rotary years ago, your dad was a DPS director, was involved in law enforcement too, right?
Yeah, my dad did 20 years at Phoenix PD from 60 to 80. And in 1980, Governor Babbitt appointed him to be the DPS director, and he stayed there for 10 years. And then after the impeachment of Ed Meekum, he went to work with Rose Mofford on her cabinet and helped her with those issues. So I kind of followed in his footsteps. I just took a different little path. I did Phoenix for 25. I went out to Mesa as the chief for 5 years. And then Governor Ducey appointed me in 2015 to be the DPS director.
Yeah, well, brother, I know in a military sense and in my last background in law enforcement too, you don't always know how to answer this, but I'll put you on the spot, or not answer it, but okay. I'll put you on the spot to say, and thank you for the commitment to the service of that. It's an insanely difficult job. And just to know you've got an entire family that's committed to it over time, and just really hats off to you guys. And thanks so much for being there for us.
It's been the honor of my life. And, I don't think the job has ever been more difficult than it is today for the young men and women who want to serve and give back to their communities. the fact that the media will not look at police work in its aggregate and say, day in and day out, these women and men do incredible things,
Yeah.
but instead trying to look at a couple bad things that happened and try to portray that as the normal part of policing, and it's just not.
Well, and so therein comes even the media itself. I find is a different form of communication, right? Different people come into conversations. They've got different things that are important to them at that point in time. To media, they're looking to either sell, and it's a business, and I'm not to knock from that end because it's obviously a needed business, has a role in society, but it oftentimes what it needs out of a conversation isn't in the best interest of every party that's involved in that conversation.
Correct.
And I think we see that it's becoming becoming easier to see that in media, and I think in public media, especially social media in particular. It's hard to see it sometimes in our family when we're recognizing that. I mean, how you collision of let's say that your family, for the most part, probably comes from a similar culture. There's obviously going to be exceptions to that of families that have blended and come together, but just in an age group alone, problem solving, how you solve a problem, talking about solving a problem with a 21-year-old versus a problem with an 81-year-old. What are the types of things that a law enforcement officer is going to use when arriving in a situation of something that maybe a family member could just think of? Okay, I'm going to see if they can grab Frank's audio back in, and we're going to take just a second to come back in and see a spot from our sponsor of Manna House Coffee. Hey guys, this is Tony at the Parent Projects podcast, and if you are powered by coffee the way that I'm powered by coffee, I think you'll appreciate knowing a way that you can help the last, lost, and least of us that didn't have a great transition. You see, the Refuge Coffee Company is a social enterprise operated by Catholic Charities of Central and Northern Arizona, where they use this coffee and this business model to help homeless veterans at the Manna House Transitional Community get back on their feet. Help a veteran turn a handout into a hand up by giving them the opportunity to earn your business. Purchase coffee today at therefugeaz.com. That's therefugeaz.com. If you order 6 or more bags, shipping will be free. And if you tell them that Parent Project sent you, I'm going to send you a travel coffee mug. Thank you again, and let's get back to the show. And times are always exciting with technology. We're going to try to wrap this in one more time. It looks like he's going to try to join us separately, come back out and come back in. One of the things that we're excited to think about is that there. Well, you know what? I'm going to pause off of that. And Frank, let's see if we got you.
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know. Again, I don't know what happened, Tony, but I'm back. So
That's okay. It's okay. Okay, so we were talking when we lost it. We're talking about different styles between people, mainly of age groups to start, maybe in a family as they're trying to solve problems. And what's interesting is a lot of the tools we have are actually created by people my kids' age in their 20s. And apparently Twitter doesn't solve, problems really well. and it might not be the best place to go. Tips and tools when you're walking in and you're trying to de-escalate a situation. What are some things you could think of that are really valuable that you really held on to from your law enforcement side?
The quieter you get, the quieter they get. And everybody in the room, whether they intuitively know it, they're looking for someone to break the atmosphere and to change the dynamic, because nobody normally wants to stay in a hostile environment. They don't want to continue to yell and scream, and sometimes you just have to go through the motions of what needs to be done and pull somebody aside and talk to them quietly so other people are interested. But it really is that you are the calm and you are the face of calm. You're true north in that room, and just to not get caught up in that moment.
Yeah. And so let's say let's say you get caught up in that moment and you have a difficult time. Great time I'm sure you'd agree to dismiss yourself from it. Take a
Absolutely.
break.
Step outside, walk around the block,
Yeah.
come back. And, we talk about the aging process, and we talk about taking care of our elderly parents, as they pass or go into hospice, or maybe they just need assisted living. Um, all of those things are emotional. And I think the key to all of it is to try to communicate with all of those parties that are involved. Um, don't look at it as that you're trying to control their life moving forward, but you're really trying to help them manage their life moving forward,
Yeah.
and include your siblings or other spouses that are involved in that situation, and try to have those family meetings, those team meetings, and be inclusive. You may be the matriarch or the patriarch of your family, and it's kind of intuitive that you take that lead position, but you have to include everyone else to make sure that stays level set.
I love that. There is one technique that I remember just really in the top of my mind that comes. And the first is in being light on yourself. It's okay to feel emotional when something's first coming. That first wave of emotion, when they come at you, see it, accept it. It's okay to get there. It's usually based off of a past experience or something that sits there. What you do with that emotion, or what you choose to respond to, or what you don't respond to,
Right.
really becomes most critical. And there's an article this week that we have that we've been highlighting, and we'll throw that in. It's when the communication styles divide aging parents and adult children. One of the top things that Howard Seaman was talking about at Next Avenue in this, and he pulled together a couple of great authors, was that oftentimes you don't have to. Not everything is cause for action when you're running into it.
Right.
Sometimes it's just destructive to run into have to do it. The use of a pregnant pause. Even in dealing with my children, one thing I think about is when they ask me a question that could go south, I've learned to say, "Why do you ask?" Instead of running into that. Man, that's insanely valuable with my parents too. When
Right.
they're emotional and when something's going, and I don't always have it together. I'm not I'm definitely not always right.
No, and the and I just went through this in my personal life. My stepfather just passed away just a few weeks ago, and him and my mom had been together for 37 years. So it was and I joke, and I hope nobody takes this wrong, but I always say she had time served. I mean, he was a good guy, but he was a challenge many times, and but it doesn't matter, how we looked at it from the outside. The inside is that was who she was with for the last 37 years, and
Yeah.
he was kind of the guy who took charge and made things happen in the house. So as he was slipping further and further away, and hospice came into our lives, that communication with his children and myself and my sisters, it was very collaborative. Everyone kind of got along, and everyone kind of knew the mission at hand. But as uncomfortable it is, somebody has to sit down and ask those hard questions about, where's the life insurance policy? Who pays the bills? How do you get your credit card statements? And again, you're not trying to control anything. You're just trying to help the other half manage it, because they're going to go through grieving and loss, and that piece of just missing having somebody there with them every day. And you want to make sure that everything, that life continues to go forward in
Right.
its natural state.
Right. I think that it's probably one of the first collisions I saw in doing senior move management comes particularly when we would have cases where it was a death of one of the spouses, and the kids come in and they just want to keep life moving for mom at some point in time. They're actually probably not they're not looking to solve a problem necessarily at that moment. They're just trying to keep things moving, and then they'll come back to it when grief is done. But everybody brings a different perspective. And one of my favorite perspectives to share off of this was where one of my clients was coming from. I had a client once who was explaining why it was so difficult for him to accept his kids coming in. His wife died. He didn't know how to cook. He had a legitimate problem. He had
Right.
no idea how he was going to eat for the next week and a half. Once all the food that came in for the funeral went away, and that was kind of his game plan for the next couple of weeks. But he actually broke it down for me, and he said, one of the difficult things is my kids have no idea who I am. The first 18 years of their life, they saw the best version of me, and they saw what I wanted them to see of me and who I wanted them to see of me. And then they've been gone for 45 years doing their
Right.
own thing, and I've been me. So
Well,
that's
and and this next phase that I'm kind of going through now, it's just been a few weeks with my mom, is they're not, she's not a technology person. I had to go out and get
yeah,
her a new phone, and I put her on my Verizon account, and then she writes passwords down on a scrap of paper somewhere and puts it in a drawer. And every time I ask for a password to the alarm or to the personal like emergency assist button, she gives me the same passcode, and it's never right. And so I actually called my sister and I said, hey, I said, we have to take control of this piece of it. Is let's set up I don't care if it's a Netflix account or it's whatever it is, put those things into your life so you can manage them for them so they don't have to worry about it. And I'm not saying cut them out, but help them keep track of things that they don't keep track of well. I mean, my mom's voicemail is always full on her phone. I go, Mom, do you know how to get your voicemail? Well, she says yes, but the answer was really no. I don't know how to do that, so I don't listen to them.
right.
So it's just some of those little things.
Right, right. And coming and approaching those in a way that they're staying in control of the majority. They're, allowing them to drive as much as possible until they recognize, I'm not able to keep up on that. It's good to ask them, do you understand how to do this? When they walk through something like that, giving them that safe space to be able to show, yeah, I don't understand how that's done. And then I think we find so much more success with being able to step up and help them in those times.
And my mom's still driving, and she started driving more now that she's not at home taking care of him.
Yeah.
She's kind of free to roam the country. And again, I'm probably a bad son because I go, Mom, when you drive, do a lot of people honk at you or anything like that? And she looks at me, goes, and she says, Frankie, stop that. That's not true. And I go, hey, I'm just checking. I want to make sure you're doing okay. Because, she's 82 years old. And I don't know what she's missing, but it does concern me a little bit.
And that's a normal thing. There was Ashton Applewhite is an author that writes on these things, and she's big. Statistics is a big stuff she started putting to it. She wanted to look at the numbers. 4% of people over the age of 65 were ending up in nursing homes. Just 4%. Wow. 96% not going to nursing homes. Right? 7 out of 8 of us, about 90% of us, our brain's going to be good all the way through. These are the real numbers that they look through, and about. I want to say, well, I guess it comes down into to the expensive stuff. But in general, another big one I remember that stood out was it's 3% of people over the age of 65 end up having a very expensive medical problem at the back end. A lot, numbers wise, again, to the media, what the media might push or where different things might come here, it can drive us to be fearful.
Right.
It's good to be alert and aware, but I think having those coming in with that calm presence, being able to do those assessments before we jump into it, and not just taking one person or some neighbor's actions as our situation is a huge part of that.
And I think you're right. I think it takes to understand what's going on, but eventually, and I know this day's probably coming for my mom. She's pretty stubborn. Is eventually we'll have to make a hard decision for her, and do we leave her alone in a house with, or do we, kind of force her into that next level of care?
Yeah. Well, and those are driving. I think what we all hope to do is we hope to have that magical conversation. That's the next talk, right? From birds and bees to that, what is your trigger? When do you think would be the time when you'd expect us to act? And then when is the time you want to start talking about it? And then seeing if that actually aligns up and there's really enough time in there to plan and do everything that has to be done between those two timelines.
That's something that I haven't done. And I think when you said that, Tony, that's a great question. Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, what's the trigger for you that you think you need help? Is it that you can't feed yourself, that you can't bathe yourself enough? Is it that you're losing track of stuff, you're forgetting things? And those are all those questions you have to have. And the other thing that I would recommend as an adult, kid who's got parents that are aging, is that, like, I've already taken my mom to a place to show her what assisted living looks like. I mean, she thinks of it as some room that's dark and drab, And I take
Yeah.
her to the place, and it's like living on a cruise ship. I mean, you know, they
Yeah.
feed you whenever you want to feed. There's movies, there's activities, there's anything she wants to do. But and I will tell you this, she had no interest in going, but at least she knows what it's like now.
Right.
And we've started to have that conversation, and I think we can grow from there. And it's not like it just happened overnight and we flipped a switch on her. So
And that's specifically into the article off of this week. That is the complaint that that the woman being interviewed by the author. That's what her major complaint was they just kind of threw up the first flag that they might want to do that initial look, that read ahead on the situation, and kids ran. I mean, they just ran with it and started putting well, it's got to happen. It's got to run now.
right.
And a big lesson learned I pulled off of that, which is a real thing, comes back to this conversation again. That the reality is there's business out here. Senior living is business. It's real
Sure.
business. There are going to be pressures to buy. There are going to be pressures to buy now and to work now and to go through those things. And so being able to almost be on your family's side and their advocate in that, so that they're going forward, getting to see everything, and then keeping the pressure back and away from them so that they then can circle back around on their time, hopefully. Realistically, though, sometimes that doesn't happen and you have to step in. That's just
And
a
if
real
they're living on Medicare and Social Security,
yeah.
You've got to familiarize yourself with that. And I've learned things already on that avenue. Is that, you know, when one of those people pass away that's on Social Security, whoever has the bigger number of Social Security coming in, that other person can adopt that number
Right.
with a death certificate and working with the Social Security Administration.
Without a doubt.
And then when you look at the care facilities, they're very expensive. And, you know, you have to look at what assets are there, what the family can put in to supplement what goes on. There's a lot of challenges that go along with that move. And I think the other part of it is, you know, like, and I'll go back to my mom, she's 82, but, you know, she could live another 10 years. And at $4,000 a month with a $1,800 a month income off of Social Security, that gets to be a challenge. And that, you know, you figure $24,000 a year that the delta is, you'll go through, you know, a few $100,000 relatively quickly. So,
Sure.
you know, you need to understand all of those parameters and realize is that they could outlive their funds and their money. And eventually that could fall back on you. And my mom wants to, you know, I hope my mom doesn't want to live with me yet. And that's good.
Well, and I tell you, there are a few circumstances I've actually seen that works really well in, but just in America, it's hard to do that. But you know, you start having the conversations early enough. I mean, really early enough. Frank, you start thinking. I mean, there's long-term care, there's insurance plans, there's products, there's a whole world that can open up to you that can assist a plan for all of those things. But it does come down to, you know, when you're able to have those conversations and become aware.
And are you linked in that? As if I come in or I recommend someone comes in, the Parents Projects have those links and can identify some of those avenues that I can approach?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so yeah, from a Parent Projects perspective, our Senior Moves product, and we'll, you know, I appreciate you throwing that one on, because we'll take a look at it here in a second. But it's designed to talk to you about those steps as early as possible. And yeah, it does. It can connect you to people who can talk you through those. Honestly, a lot of us, while we're dealing with our parents right now, it's one of the best opportunities for us to start thinking about how we're going to do it. 100% of us are going to die.
Right.
100% of us are going to die. We're all we're blessed if we have that opportunity to set that up and let that generally to ensure that we've got all the materials and everything in place to do that without going into family is what is kind of that American way. When you look at how other countries have dealt with this, they really tend to value what comes out of the family stepping up. And it's not considered so much a burden as some really valuable things that come out of it too. Those are conversations that get to come out of all of this, multi-generational stuff. But yeah.
And using your Senior Move program, a parent can actually map that out and do a lot of that stuff ahead of time. And, you know, and this brings up an interesting topic, because you and I have been talking about the slow change in a person's mental health or psychological personal health and actually passing away slowly. But
Yeah.
there are, people die suddenly too. They don't wake up, they get in an
With,
accident, they fall. And that sudden death is another completely different challenge to deal with because you haven't had any time to plan. So if there is a product, there is something that you can do for yourself to make everybody else's life easier. But,
yeah.
follow that program.
Well, look, without a doubt, that's exactly what we set out to do. So the market, and we saw, was just absolutely full of people that would talk to people and try to get you to go out and do this because you should do this and it makes sense to go do this. But people don't buy and don't do what they need. They do and buy what they want, right?
Well, no one
And
wants to think about dying.
they apparently not, right? But they it really, what we learned is that we focused. I'm an emergency management guy, right? I mean,
Right.
that's kind of where my specialty has been. And when we applied that mindset here, I recognize that is one of the best opportunities to help people is when that just happened. We call them catalysts, right? So it's a late in life divorce. It's a death of one of the family members. It's debt. They have hit that point where they've outspent or about to outspend what savings they have. It's a new diagnosis of a disability that impacts how they do what are called their ADLs, or their adult daily living, activities of daily living. There we go. Of their activities of daily living, brushing their own teeth, right, taking care of themselves, combing their hair, being able to toilet themselves, those types of things. These are catalysts that do force us to get involved. And honestly, we've focused on catching those people with a checklist that is time tested and it utilizes machine learning in order to understand, hey, this is your situation. Generally, these are the things that you should be looking at. And by the way, these are the things you can help learn for it. We'll pull them in when you get to that task. And it helps keep you focused and communicate about it with your family. But because you did and you threw it out, I think it's a good time for us to take that last break. And we're going to jump over to it and see what's coming for us, because we indeed we completed this week. We launched people into our beta this week, and so we've got 50 families that are coming into the beta product to work through, and then in October a full commercial launch through Phoenix, and then a national push. So we're pretty excited about it. But why don't we take a break real quickly, and we'll push over to see the Senior Moves Connect program. Hey, everybody, and we're back. It's Tony Siebers. I've got Frank Milstead on, a career law enforcement officer, also a son. And just like every one of us has an opportunity for a parent project and works with those parent projects. And we've been talking about, up till now, crisis communications, the difference in those things, building some awareness, how to handle those things when they first come down. What we're going to really land the airplane today with some of those things that you can do with law enforcement or with emergency services. In particular, if you've got a family member, that maybe they live out of state or they live across town. What is in law enforcement or emergency services go there? What are some things we can be doing, Frank, ahead of time? And then when they're there, what are things, I guess, let's start with ahead of time. What are things that a family could do to prepare a household that when law enforcement or, emergency services show up to deal with the situation, they can become aware of you, how to get a hold of you, or what needs to happen?
Yeah. So, there's a couple problems, especially when your parents live in a different state, or at least, they're 50 miles away from you. And you can't be there and they're alone. And, I worry about this again with my own mother falling and the fire department coming, and who does she deal with? Well, I think even if you do something just as simple as take a notebook and put emergency contact information and leave it on the counter, something that's available, somebody might see when they come in the door, there's a table with information on it. And I would say if you live out of state or you're in a remote part, when you're out visiting, try to go by that fire department and talk to somebody. Maybe you find out who the deputy is or the police officer that routinely patrols that area, and see if you can build some kind of relationship there as well. And there's all kinds of products, electronic products on the market. I know I have my mom hooked up. I not only can I, but my sister can see who comes to her door through the doorbell. She has a button. If she falls and can't get up, it alerts the fire department and they respond, but it also alerts us. So we can know what's going on as well. And it's a little strange that, like, I know it, but it gives me a little bit of peace of mind because I know she's alone. But like when she leaves in the car, I know she's out driving. When someone comes and delivers something, I know they're there. If someone is coming to the door that shouldn't be there, I would know that. So I think some of those products are really helpful. And it's not like it's cameras inside where you're spying on them and it's a privacy thing. It's more of just awareness thing of what's going on around the perimeter of the house, and that you know that your mom or your loved one is coming and going at the same time. But if you can build relationships, if you can leave that data somewhere where somebody can easily find it to contact you, I think that's paramount.
That's fantastic. And actually, when I sit and think about some of those, especially the doorbells, the electronic doorbell areas, that, I mean, obviously, if you see the fire department breaking the door down or somebody kicking the door, and you know there's going to be a situation to deal with, you can communicate in many of them back into law enforcement instantly, right?
Yep, I can talk to the camera. I can unlock and unlock her front door. If she leaves it open, I can lock it remotely from the phone. I mean, there's just so much technology out there today that we can really benefit from.
Now, with that said, introduction of technology, that can be problematic, right? In my own parent project, there's only so much. The cable company in her little town down in Kansas for my mother-in-law, they called it quits and said, okay, everybody, you're going to have to go to internet. So everybody in town's gone to this internet-based television. They're doing Netflix and they're doing whatever it might be. My goodness, she's got a little streaming stick that's got all those services on it, but I think that did it in so many different ways, complex menus and working through. She essentially is like I need a button and let it turn on something that looks like a TV.
Right.
Those are, we do have to be cautious off of that so that they're informed and know what's going on, but be reading our family members, I think, as to what they can handle in technology and what they can't.
But, and if you take that kind of to the next meaningful place with the technology is, again, I hate to refer back to my mom because if she watches this, she'll hate me. She'll like, I can't believe you said these things about me. But she called me.
Mom, you raised an amazing young man. So he speaks highly of you off camera. So
I always refer to her as the producer because I know without her, this doesn't happen. So, she said, hey, there's some money missing from my account. There was some overdraft. There was this, even the technology she has, it cycles off of a credit card. Where does that credit card bill go? Who pays that credit card? Is it something that she's used to, or is that something that her husband took care of? And again, getting your name, a couple family members' names, or bringing her assets into your bank or whatever it is, just so if you can help her manage that or help them manage what goes on, or God forbid something bad happens to them, that you now have access to take care of the issues that need to be taken care of.
Yeah. Those are wonderful tricks. We've talked about those at different episodes with various folks along the way that have definitely been proponents of doing that. If you can be added onto the account, if the family members are good, and when you're working with them as part of their solution, if they would have come to you and said, "Hey, well, my mother-in-law, she's like, I'm getting all this stuff from AARP and I'm overwhelmed and I'm not quite sure what insurance is, what did I buy and what am I supposed to do?" Because that all, by the way, hit when Social Security and Medicare and all that stuff's happening at the same time.
Right.
And so that's a lot of information for them to be able to take in at one time. And so they ask.
Yeah, it's a lot for any of us.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, how many of us? I think I was blessed to get to see my parents go through the sign up, the whole 65, 67 Medicare. Like, when do you sign up? When do you not sign up? If you don't, you have to make an election, or else you pay a penalty for the rest of your life, right? If you don't hit it a certain time, like, there's real ramifications to that, and there's not a lot of great communication. engaging and helping a family member just walk through their system is a great way for us to understand what needs to happen in our situations too. So,
Right. And then
um,
you put them on an iPad or a tablet, and you've got all the phishing issues going on with people trying
yeah,
to scam them for information. And
yeah,
if you're looking at your parents' banking records or your loved one's banking records, at least you can see if there's suspicious activity happening. You may not be able to sit there and understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. I've heard the stories where people want to be benevolent. They want to give everybody $100 who calls for whatever the issue is.
yeah.
Whether it's veterans or police or dogs or cats or whatever. They just want to be benevolent. And next thing you know, they're really overextending themselves. But someone has to track that. And then the internet is just such a horrible place to get caught in what they're doing. They get that phone call. Hey, this is the power company, and if you don't pay us right now, we're going to shut your power off.
Yeah.
People fall for that.
Well, or the scams of, hey, this is a grandchild.
Right.
And they're in that place where they can't exactly recall what the grandchild's voice is or isn't. So they'll go with it, and they're able to see the grandchildren from social media platforms of where they're connected and put that together. So those are important things. So in scams and protecting, particularly about that, because it can be, while we put off, some of those statistics that Ashton Applewhite had looked through of where people will keep it together, they'll have some level of balance to be able to do it. They're not going to end up in nursing homes. The reality is privacy and being attacked online has changed a lot. And if they're having a hard time keeping up with that tool and that technology, it seems they're becoming more vulnerable. Maybe not just because they can't communicate about it, but it's because, or think through it. It's because it moves so quickly. They haven't had time to think through it and how fast that scam comes at them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not here to endorse anybody, but the fact that we're talking about doing things in Arizona and our Arizona heritage and background, one of the premier providers is an Arizona company called LifeLock, who can help track your expenses and have the stealing of your identity. And I don't know anybody over there. I know they've hired law enforcement, and I've met the guy that runs the place, so I don't have any skin in the game. But I know they've been around a long time, and I know they've become very sophisticated at what they do. And that, whatever that monthly fee is, that might be worth protecting somebody's assets.
Absolutely. Well, or different things. One thing for sure, it'd come up in an earlier one is make sure you lock your parents' credit off. Right. It's an easy thing to do. The 3 credit bureaus, lock them, because you can unlock them in 2 seconds online, easy to come back on, and they can deal with it. It is one of those levels of protection. Watching for mortgage fraud. I had a call this morning with a really good friend of mine who's advanced in age, and man, people just keep plaguing on her for that. And that was something that she's been frustrated by and having to work her way through. So,
well, and again, you go back to that same thing with withdrawal alerts and things like that, where, if I do something over $500 on my credit card, it sends me alerts, says, hey, you just spent more than $500. Well, you can do that to alert more than just me. It could alert, a family member or somebody else to keep track of some of that.
Without a doubt. And I will say, and it's not a paid advertisement or plug, I don't get anything for saying it, but by far, Intuit's Mint thing is, Intuit's Mint is probably one of the best products right now that I've seen, where you can, if they've got those accounts that have online logins, because we have our own lives to do and our own logins, and a lot of them probably running your household, where you can set up that profile that they're not going to care to look at it for technology, but it allows you to have visibility without having control of their finance from that. So you're seeing those things as it comes across. Right. You can actually see one account pay the other account. Like, everything's connected from within that. It's easy for the family to understand where everything's at. As you get smarter and smarter, it's a place to be adding it and getting that source of truth. But on the other side, until the day comes, it'll help you, I guess, see information and maybe a trend or a problem before, so that you can have that conversation with them. And that's really what it comes back down to circle full and start closing off. It comes down to having good information and being able to present that, and then have a conversation and let them lead you as to what their concern might be with that stuff. If you come to them and say, wow, I see that all of this activity, I'm not controlling your bank account, but I see that all of this activity is happening over here, and it seems to happen in a way where you keep getting charged things over here and finance charge. can I help you with that? Can I help you with that so that you hold on to your money there, or you're not paying those? I think they become ways that you enable them and you help them to live their best life, as opposed to fight them out or run the risk of getting into a communication style with a divide.
Well, I think the communication style is paramount again into that whole system. Is we've all seen parents who talk to kids in a very belittling way. What are you dumb? Are you an idiot? Why would you do this? And it just makes a very offensive relationship. It's argumentative, and it's really the conversation. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. Hey, whoever. Here's some things that are available. Can we talk about this and have a conversation? And as it's like, hey, it's exploratory and it's helpful, and it's not condemning in any way, because no one wants to feel badly about what they've been doing with their personal life.
Without a doubt, there are, as we go to close this up here, we've got this. There's a great side blog would see top 8 things not to say to an aging parent, but generally they follow along the lines of, not telling them, well, how do you not remember that? Or how could you do that if you were really trying? It's something. Or I just showed you how to use this yesterday. These types of things are, you already told me that. Those are things that can make it difficult for them, they're just trying to grasp with the reality of needing to be more deliberate about their actions and their
they'll shut down their conversation with you, and then you won't know anything.
Without a doubt. And honestly, when we see a lot of those, that's when we see a lot of the firing back at the other side, where the parents are like, well, you're just an idiot, right? Or you're just young, or you don't get it, or this doesn't happen. And that book puts things into the wrong spectrum. So that communication, huge. Hey, Frank, I really appreciate it today. The communication before, after a crisis, when things come up, a lot of great stuff there. I appreciate you sharing at risk of death from your mom, your own personal project. I appreciate your and that you would open up this way with us. So thank you very much, and thanks for joining us, brother.
Well, that's it for the team this week, and thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed the content, remember to subscribe and to share this episode on the app that you're using right now. Your reviews and your comments, they really help us expand our reach as well as our perspective. So if you have time, also drop us a note. Let us know how we're doing. For tips and tools to clarify your parent project, simplify communication with your stakeholders, and verify the professionals that you choose, you can find us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for trusting us. Until our next episode, behold and be held.
Thank you for listening to this Parent Projects podcast production. To access our show notes, resources, or forums, join us on your favorite social media platform or go to parentprojects.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Family Media and Technology Group Incorporated and Parent Projects LLC. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcast.